Good good morning, Professor Suresh Babu, Professor Pushpangadan, Dr. Anu, colleagues, friends. It's nice to have a discussion after the unsettling situation that particularly Tamil Nadu has. And this is one way to get back. I thought it's an appropriate occasion to get back the director of Madras School of Economics back to rails. I think the topic that is taken up is technical progress, is technical progress, the engine of growth in Kerala, a co-integration analysis. In fact, that reminded me of, I also have my heart very close to innovation, technological change, etc., etc. 2 years ago, I delivered in the Kerala Science Congress P.K. Gopalakrishnan Memorial Lecture. I couldn't write it up. The contention that I made in Kerala, that the making of Kerala model, how it was made, public action, which is what we have all told, we are all told by Amartya Sen and others. Public action is at the root of the making of the Kerala model of development. In fact, why I thought one could articulate in this way. When you think in terms of socio-economic progress, there is no part of the world that phenomena has happened without the influence of science, technology, and innovation. Innovation is a broader sense. In that sense, if you take Kerala's development trajectory, one could see that Kerala development model from the innovation perspective or innovation system perspective is the making of the social and governance innovation, starting with the early social reformers, starting in the early 18th century, early 19th century, mid 19th century. We have then Sri Narayana Guru, Chattambi Swamigal, and others, Ayangali and others. And social and governance, later it culminated in the what is called our land reform and all kinds of later. So we have social and governance innovation that was quintessentially at the root of the making of Kerala model. But then if any model to be sustained and to contribute towards further economic development, S and G model of innovation that has got its limits. That was already reached its limits by early 70s, but somehow we have been pushing it through again governance innovation through decentralization and other things, because our faith in, because we are told that it is the what is called the public action that is driving Kerala's development. It took, in fact, 2020 to realize that from S and G, you have to move to S and T, science and technology driven innovation. That took 2020, Isaac's budget that is transforming Kerala to a knowledge economy that is explicitly and categorically underlined the relevance of driving the relevance of science, technology, and innovation and development. So, in fact, I would say that this period of loss of Kerala. In fact, if Kerala could not, despite our, if Francis Stewart and others argue that normally with high human capital development, such people will be more productive, such regions will be more growth, having higher development and growth. But in Kerala, it has not happened. But we were happy that growth is not a problem. Growth is not the issue, because we are more concerned about, even without growth, we have already at the top of the world. But that is actually we are paying today. In fact, last 30 years, if you take, say, for example, in Kerala, first 15 years, if you have got rate of growth of Kerala's GSDP, if you believe in that, it has been above the national average, marginally above the national average by almost 7%. While Kerala's potential, Kerala has the potential of growing at least 1.5 times the national average. But then the last 15 years, if you take, say, for example, our growth rate has been almost 0.5% lower than the national average. That is something which Kerala cannot afford. While Tamil Nadu, for example, have got, for example, year before last, growth rate at the national level was 6.5%. Tamil Nadu growing at a rate of 11.5%, Kerala declining to 6.18%. And last three, I mean, that's okay. I don't want to get, this is not about Kerala's growth. So the point I'm trying to say is that this explicit recognition of science, technology, and innovation in Kerala's development has not received the attention that it actually deserves. Now that I'm very happy that we have Professor Pushpangathan and Dr. Anup initiating this issue, that this issue deserves a lot of discussion. And I think I don't think that you have given any seminar recently. And I think this is a time that I must publicly acknowledge. In fact, I hope we will get a proper forum to honor you for that in starting PhD program with this institute and connecting with, affiliating with the Cochin University. Professor Pushpanathan had an important role. You may have a difference of view in terms of whether Cochin University was the right place to affiliate and all. That's a different issue altogether. I'm always critical of myself. So one can think that we could have gone for JNU, could have gone for Harvard or Cambridge. But then Professor Pushpangathan did an important job in doing that. That I think that deserves a public recognition. I think it's occasion to do that. And I don't think that we could have got a better person other than Professor Suresh Babu to be a discussant of he knows Kerala. He's about it in terms of technology, economic growth, and his wide range. I mean, he writes, and he's very much into fiscal thing also. In fact, in his hat, he has a hat of IIT professor, has a hat of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council consultant, and now Madras School of Development Studies director. And above all, I must tell you that he was my wonderful friend when he was a student. Is really a thinking mind. That's a thinking mind. I'm very happy to welcome you, and I would rather have you here physically in a more closer interaction with our scholars. And I know that you have been helping us with much appreciation and thanks. I welcome you. And as far as Anup is concerned, it is a part of his job, because it's a part of faculty commitment. Because every month we are, but I'm happy that I wanted to give that first seminar, which you have given this. But don't take it as that you have exhausted your opportunity. You will be having an opportunity to have a solo seminar. Don't worry about that. This is so. With all these words, I welcome you to this seminar and. Over to our speakers of the day.
The chairman, distinguished delegates, my dear students. Today I am taking up a very important problem, which I feel the excellent introduction of long-term growth is addressed by Simon Kuznets in his Nobel Prize winning lecture. He says that long-term growth is determined by advancing technology and institutional and ideological adjustments. These two things I have my feeling. Institutional and ideological adjustments have been, as mentioned by Joseph, already there, he has already mentioned this, but unfortunately, my feeling is technical progress is, whether it is there or not is a major concern which we are addressing. Whether it is there in Kerala or not, this is a major problem which we are addressing, technical problem. That is to say, we have to, if we want to address this particular problem in a region like Kerala, then we are talking about a subnational region. We are talking about a subnational region. Then we have to think about how do we go about measuring this? A very difficult task. We can all talk about in papers, but coming to measurement, very difficult. Indeed, a difficult task. We are going to see our problems. Myself, and then I found that my Anup is supposed to be a very time series econometrician, I am told. But this young man He's not using his skills. So I thought, let him be part of the exercise. Because I am telling you, I am a victim. 86 or 87, after 86 or 87, after leaving the graduate school from an American university, I never used my econometrics. So I am a big zero as a result. So this should not happen to a young mind like Anup, because he's a time series econometrics. Is coming in a big way. This is very essential also for what I am going to do for all the states in Kerala. That is what we are joining together, where he will be doing that part of the exercise. And I will, of course, give him my intellectual capacity, but the analysis will be this boy's job. So when we have decided to do this sort of a job, we have to assume a way in any analytical exercise, measurement becomes possible only if you have measures available. Where do we get institutional measurements? Where do we get ideological measurements? But only thing we could say that technical progress can be measured. Several measures are available. There's the pioneering work of Solo is there. How to measure the technical progress. He has suggested in his path-breaking um, paper in 1956, which earned him the Nobel Prize. How to measure the technical progress of a society, and he did this for America, and that he showed that this can be measured under certain highly simplified assumptions. Otherwise, you can't do anything. You are only documenting. Measurement becomes, assumptions become very important. You can be very critical about these assumptions. There is no problem. But if you want to measure something in the real world, you have to make certain assumptions. These assumptions are critical. And see, then you confront that predictions of that particular model with the reality and see to what extent this is true in Kerala. This is what essentially we are going to do in this particular study, especially on Kerala, because it's a case study. Then we will be doing it for the remaining 22 or 24 states. We will be doing it. The subnational units will be examined, and their sustainability is very important. We are asking so many people, oh, why do you worry? Kerala is growing very fast. Why do you worry about it? Okay, agreed. Kerala is growing. Whether this growth is sustainable or not, that is the more important thing. Then again, only man we have help is some analytical rigor is Solo. Robert Solo comes back and say, technical progress is the only way sustainability can be maintained. If you don't have technical progress, that growth cannot be sustained. This is the we take this as the starting point. It is our working hypothesis. If you have, if we have, if by measuring after measuring the technical progress in Kerala, if we find that it is sustained, it is there, then we say that our growth is sustainable. Otherwise, we are in a big trouble. We are heading towards a big trouble. It cannot be sustained. So, what are the things to be done? That's a different set of issues. Nobody has done it so far for a region. That is what we are trying to do in this case by a case study of Kerala. Now, what are the major? Is technical progress the engine of growth in Kerala? Co-integration, that's a technical part. This he will be dealing with co-integration. That is like, I am not going into. I am not capable, to be honest with you. Now, technical progress is the engine. In development literature, this is the standard proposition. The engine of growth is technical progress. That takes us the growth path, technical progress. First, what are the paper at a glance? Research questions we are asking, is technical progress the engine of growth in Kerala? Second, co-integration analysis, key measure of technical progress, a key measure is total factor productivity and national income. Okay. Approach, co-integration analysis, dual TFVG and per capita real GDP. That is economic growth, and everybody uses per capita growth, GDP, as a measure of technical growth. Sorry, economic growth. Theoretical anchor, solo growth model with exogenous, it is manna from heaven. We don't know how this manna. Then you have so many other issues to be looked into. Technical progress, if you want to analyze endogenously, I don't think we have capable of, we have capable, we are capable of doing it at the moment. So first of all, we assume that away. Institutions assume away. What are the ideology? Assume away. Whether it is my left, right, extreme wing or that wing, no. These are all factors contributed to the development process. But we cannot measure all these things together. Therefore, only technical progress we consider at the moment, and that too, TFPG, total factor productivity growth, is the technical progress. That is the because why we have taken this progress, technical progress, because Soul has shown that this can be computed, this can be calculated using input, factor inputs. From that you can calculate that. Therefore, that can be taken as several other ways of doing it. But we after going through the growth literature, is the only method where we can put some finger on and say this is what growth, technical progress. That is what is happening in this region. And therefore, method, that is of course a Siebert Andrews test. That is whether they are one leads the other, leading to the other. That will be the after computing this technical progress and economic growth, we will Anup will do this part of the analysis. And what is that we have found? No long-run relationship. We couldn't find any long-run relationship between technical progress and economic growth in Kerala. Means growth is it is cannot be sustained. Kerala's economic growth cannot be sustained. That is a message. That is a summary version. When we get into details. Our objective is to develop a methodology for measuring sustainability of regional growth, particularly at the subnational level. Obviously, we are taking Kerala as a case study, subnational level. Okay, these things we don't have to. Understand source of growth is crucial for developing economy. Now, India's federal structure, Kerala is distinctive high human development. What are the features of Kerala's major features of Kerala's development? Which high human development, but modest industrialization. Industrialization is not there. Historically, Raj says that there is no historic. That component is simply not in the caste structure. That is, the Vaishya class is simply not there in Kerala. Why? That institution is missing. I am leaving that to the institutional economists to find out why it is the case, what happened. It is that particular category of people should have done the job for the industrialization. That should have taken us to further growth. But that is not here, not in our system. Now, capital stock data alternative, we don't know. So we have only now data analysis. Like when we get into the data analysis, we have looked at the data, what data we have. Per capita growth, GDP growth, we have data. So economic growth, calculating economic growth at the state level, no problem. Second, TFVG, total factor productivity growth, that is inputs. When you come to the inputs, we are in big trouble. Labor supply, labor input. Where do we find the labor input? Well, we have some survey, NSSO data is there, that will give you some information. The more difficult one is the capital stock estimation. Simply not there for Kerala. All India level you have. But at the state level, this information is not. Therefore, Solo's measure of TFPG we cannot apply. Therefore, what we have done is we have gone for the an alternative factor, total factor productivity. What is that? That is what we are saying is that dual top factor productivity. Yeah, we go in for dual factor productivity based on um, national income identity. That is, total national income is equal to factor inputs, sum of the payment for the factor inputs, capital plus labor. Then you differentiate that with respect to time, you rearrange it, you will get that total factor productivity can take two value. One is equal to, can be defined from this definition. There are two measures can be taken. One is solo measure, which is output growth minus weighted input growth. That we can't compute because we don't have the information. Then we have the weighted factor input growth. You know, W, where is that? Dual TFVG, which is equal to the share weighted input price growth rate, rental rate plus real wage rate. That is what we are going to implement for Kerala. We cannot do the other one. So this will be, we have to find the share of capital and share of labor in the total national income, which is equal to sum of the factor shares. That is capital and labor, only two inputs there, capital and labor. And we have to first calculate, you know the problem with the capital as such, the big controversy, Cambridge controversies, John Robinson, big dadas fight, how to measure, how it is rate of return, all those things. We have gone through that, and I was then finally said, but statisticians have gone in a different direction. They started estimating it somehow. Some assumptions they have estimate, but they have to estimate it. Otherwise, they cannot calculate the national income of a state. Therefore, we take the statisticians' position. Theoretical positions, let them serve. Let the MITs, Cambridge universities, and MITs, let them still struggle and find out when. But finally, they have given up. It is not possible to resolve the problem. So that's the end of it. Only statisticians prevail. We take that as wage rates. We have a problem here. Wage rates, national sample survey on the employment, unemployment, quinquennial surveys starting from 82 only. 72, but 82 only we have the wage rates data. 82 onwards until 11, 12, we have every 5 years we have data on employment. Employment is there, but you have to evaluate W times L. What is the W? That W is another problematic problem here. We cannot use agriculture wages. We cannot use industrial wages. But in this case, there is one way out. In National Employment Survey, they give wage rate for the regular workers, employment rate for casual workers, and they have given self-employed workers wage rate. Remuneration they call, not wage rates. In the remuneration, they include the profitability of that unit operation. So we cannot take that as the wage rate, because it is a remuneration which includes wage rate. Therefore, what we have done is regular wage rate times, we have taken a product of regular wage rate and casual wage rate is taken as a proxy for self-employed labor. Then we have weighted all these things to come up with a economy-wide wage rate for the state. That times the employment figures available from the labor survey. We have W times L, that is a share of wages we have calculated in the national income. Once the share of wages wages is calculated. 1 minus of that will give you the share of capital. Now we have to calculate the rental rate in the economy. Rental rate by definition, it is the we have taken it as the, what is that definition they have used? Rental rate, R.
Yes.
Eh? Rental rate is equal to, there is one component called interest rate plus depreciation. For interest rate, we have taken the
SBI's
SBI series. We have taken that as the interest rate. Again, depreciation rate, we don't have an estimate, and they only hand waving depreciation. There is no such thing as they would say 5%, 8%. But there are some methods available, but which takes a lot of time and effort to, if you want to calculate depreciation rate for the produced means of production. Buildings, how do you calculate the depreciation rate? Roads, how do you calculate the depreciation rate? But there are methods available for calculating this. This has to be, again, we have not included this component because there is no reliable estimate on the depreciation rate. Therefore, we have used only, we have approximated rental rate as the interest rate premium, interest rate as the rental rate. It then deflated by the national income deflator, we have the real interest rate, real rental rate. Then the share of that is calculated by 1 minus share of wages. So this will give you the calculation of the dual value of total factor productivity, which is equal to the share weighted rental rate plus share weighted wage rate, and the real wage rate. And real wage rate, of course, national income deflator is being used, and that is then summed up, and that will. That is where is the summary? That is done. We have done. Slide key observation. Analysis period, again, all this to calculate looking at the database. We have the period of analysis we can do is only for 93, 94 to 20 to 21 for Kerala and India per capita. Okay. Dual TFPG, co-movement observed between Kerala and India, more or less same movement. Deviation larger in early period, narrowing to end of sample sharp. That you are explaining the time series trend today. Trend analysis, not you go to the next slide. You'll see. Theoretical framework, data construction, graphical analysis, unit root test, go into graphical analysis. Like, why don't we go after computing this Kerala and India real per capita GDP growth? This is the after all these assumptions, we got that the Kerala and India move more or less same way. And some edge over for Kerala until 2005 or 2006. Growth I am talking about. After that, it is more or less moving the same way. Okay. DFP growth rate and they more or less the growth rate, the total factor productivity growth. Growth rate more or less same for India and Kerala. Okay.
India was high.
On the one.
Can you give average growth rate? It looks like that curve is about Kerala.
Kerala, above Kerala. That is true. Above Kerala, if you take an average, I think all right. Second, you want to see that diagram again?
No, because it looks, that is the question actually.
Okay. Above. So technical progress is total factor productivity dual measure is lower than all India level. But every growth rate and real per capita, eh? Scatter plot relationship undo illയോ എന്നുള്ളത്. That you go into the test.
Okay.
Statistical test like you explain that, but
So from this one, we just did uh, the technical. I mean, we have kept it very basic. Why? Because all these estimates are very restrictive, under very restrictive assumptions. So there is no point in getting into a detailed time series analysis, because this wage rates we are constructing, rental rate it's approximated. We don't consider for depreciation. And this method, it's proposed by Siao in 2002 in an American Economic Review paper, where he studied for East Asian countries. He did it at a country level basis. This method as an alternative to what Solo proposed. So there itself, that model is limited. We have added our own limitations due to the lack of data availability, but there is no, I mean, no alternative whatsoever. So what we did is we just did very basic time series analysis, because we have just around 30 observations, so we can't go anything beyond. So what we found out was that these two series, we have constructed this dual TFP index to facilitate for this long time analysis, because taken this log of per capita and SDP. We found that both of them are non-stationary and there is some structural break happening. And for Kerala and all India, we see this structural breaks. We account for that. And then we run this Engel-Granger co-integration, just because it's we are just keeping it simple, like I said, by varied. So what we found is that from the results, the null is that there is no co-integration. We see that we are failing to reject the null. That is, from the results that we have obtained, we could not find any long run stable relationship between total factor productivity and our economy. I mean, per capita GDP. So, per capita, this is normally output, per capita output. So, that is the final takeaway from here. But again, we do not present this as a definitive result because of the data constraints. So this is what it indicates. But does that mean that we do not have technical progress? No. Obviously, there is technical progress, but whether the diffusion has happened,
that is not there.
That is the question. So technical progress is there, but to what end it is there, where all it is present? So that is the question that one want to know. And again, we have taken this employment unemployment survey as well as this PLFS data. These two numbers are not strictly comparable due to the differences in methodology. So that is one more caveat. But as he said earlier, we don't have any other data. And it is not technically possible to measure it only using PLFS data, because PLFS is a rich data. You have actually an annual time series. So we have what 8 or 9 years observation. So we can't do anything with that. But what we are planning to do is we are going to construct this exclusively using PLFS data and keep this information in the open, maybe as a GitHub repository or something, on which people can later work on. But that will happen maybe after 10 to 20 years later, because you need minimum 30 of years observation to make a meaningful analysis. But that's what we are going to do. We will start it, and in the hope that someone will take it up in the future. So this is just a starting point with a lot of restrictions. So we nowhere claim that this is a definitive result.
No, this is the first attempt.
This is a first attempt, and nowhere a definitive result. So
This is
with
the
all,
beginning.
this is a beginning. With all those caveats, these are the limitations we have discussed. With all these caveats, we are coming to the conclusion. Okay.
First of all, we are not able to establish a long relation between technical progress, dual technical progress and output growth, per capita output growth, which means that this growth is not sustainable in Kerala. That is one very powerful result. Whatever growth you observe, technical progress you see, it's only here and there. It is not diffused throughout Kerala. That is basically the message. That is again the subject to the caveat. It is exogenous, manna from heaven. Do we have another alternative technical progress? Endogenous growth? That we do. We have to do some work. We have to see whether that has diffused in Kerala. But I don't know whether that is possible. We have to think about that particular type of analysis. Rich growth models available. We have to examine that case again. Second is sustainability is anyway it's not possible. Now, technical progress has to be endogenized and look for whether that has any impact on growth in Kerala. These are the two major problems, major findings we have without technical progress. What does it mean? Whatever growth you observe, only input growth rates, nothing else. Fact inputs, not on technical growth. That is the implication. Whatever we observe, it is not technical progress, but input growth rate. You are using more inputs and you are getting more out. That's it. These are the major findings of the present exercise. And with that, we wind up and stop.
Okay, it's very nice and crisp presentation. I think it was to the point, very pertinent question, and not a conclusive answer. I'm sure there is this is indeed an area where much could be done, and we have to make authentic reflection. The most appropriate person, I would say, in this country. He has a book on innovation jointly with my professor, and he has been the advisor to Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. And he has his work, you should read his book, Hastening Slowly About India's Industrial Growth, and numerous other. And I would say that we have a highly accomplished academician who could think in terms of everything that the academician could aspire of in terms of academic excellence, administrative excellence, international exposure, publication, and all that. I also note the presence of our planning board member, planning board chief, Sunita. Sunita, I think Professor Suresh Babu knows. Yeah, you are much younger to him. You are much younger to him, right? Okay, so we would now request Professor Suresh Babu to provide his reflection on the thoughts shared with us. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And first of all, let me thank the organizers for this opportunity to be a chair for Professor Pushpangadan's and Anoop's paper. Well, you don't get this kind of an opportunity in life, when you have an opportunity to chair a session of a paper by your own teacher. And I think that's a privilege for me, and with great honor, I accept that privilege. I also want to make 2 points before I come to the paper per se. One, I would actually, with great humbleness, I would say that whatever I have learned about productivity growth and a little bit of production functions and microeconomics is from my teacher, Professor Pushpangadan. It is his kind of guidance as well as very meticulous set of readings that has given us this training to understand and disentangle production functions. It's a difficult word, production functions. And his introduction to that is something which I really value and which has really taken me quite far in this whole, understanding or studying of production functions. Thank you, sir, for that. And I also think that, what he talked about, Anup, is really a great thing because, it is this type of mentoring that he did towards us that has really helped us in our careers. So I am really jealous of Anup that he's really having this opportunity. Second thing that I want to say as a tribute to Professor Pushpangadan is that, well, in 1994, Professor Pushpangadan and Professor Balakrishnan wrote a paper on productivity growth, and I was their project assistant to that paper, which for the first time in India used a method to arrive at value added at constant prices. So the problem is in terms of arriving variables at constant prices, that is converting the nominal variables to the real variables. And value added arriving was a problem because conventional studies used what is known as a single deflation, that is deflating with the output price index. But in this paper, Professor Pushpangadan and Balakrishnan used a method called double deflation, that is using input prices as well as output prices to arrive at the real value added. And, it is really a matter of great honor that today, after 32 years, India's new GDP series uses double deflation. Yeah. After so much of debates and discussions in terms of what is an ideal deflator and how we could arrive at value added at constant prices, the new national accounts series actually uses double deflation. I'm really happy that, I could also put in my kind of an effort to that as a technical advisor to the new GDP series revision committee. And it's a matter of great pride for all of us that, Professor Pushpangadan's contribution has been recognized as the new series is using his methodology. Thank you, sir, for that. Let me come to this paper now. It's an important paper. As always, Professor Pushpangadan's attempt is in terms of provoking further studies on this area. And it falls in that stream of thinking because, he is actually opening doors for a number of other issues that one could pick up and do further research. So in that sense, it's a very, very important paper, especially in terms of understanding the drivers of growth. Now, this is an area which has had so much of literature, many debates, including the most recent 2 Nobel Prizes, I would say. And as Robert Lucas pointed out in one of his lectures, that once when you start thinking about growth, it is virtually impossible to think about anything else. Yeah? Because the drivers of growth as well as the contributors of growth is something which is a lifetime engagement. So in that sense, I think this paper is very important to understand Kerala's growth process. And this, new method that Professor Pushpangadan again is putting forth here needs a very close discussion. Now, why do I say this? First, I think there's a lot of importance in understanding the role of total factor productivity or the contribution of total factor productivity to growth process. Because we know that from the East Asian economies, growth trajectory, it actually created a lot of debate. One school of thought argued that it is basically capital accumulation and factor augmentation that contributed to growth. And another school of thought argued that, well, it is basically total factor productivity that contributed to growth. And this opened up both methodological as well as theoretical debates in terms of understanding growth process. Yeah? In fact, the biggest critique of productivity driving growth in East Asian economies was Paul Krugman, who actually dismissed the contribution of productivity growth by arguing that, well, it is only factor accumulation and input augmentation that actually drove growth. So decomposing growth then becomes an important agenda. How do we decompose growth? There are very many methods of decomposing growth. And the most kind of a used method is in terms of what Professor Pushpangadan and Anup does here, that is using the Solos framework in terms of understanding word process. Now, here there are a couple of things that really needs very close examination. One important thing that we need to understand is, should we at all use the primal or the dual in terms of decomposing this growth process? When I say primal, that is basically using a production function and using factor inputs. And when I say dual, it is basically using the cost shares as well as the input costs. Now, the conventional approach is using the primal, and we get the inputs, and and you estimate the production function, and then you get a residual, and that residual we don't know what it is, so we call it as productivity, and that is the typical Solos kind of an explanation. But here, this paper departs, and they actually uses the dual approach. Now, one important thing that we need to keep in mind is that when we use the dual, the same challenges as the primal actually remains. Yeah, what is that? The challenge that remains is basically having a better estimate of capital. Yeah. Labor's share and labor's contributions can be estimated to some extent in a much more refined way, but capital estimates becomes a problem. To overcome that, that is to overcome the tedious job of constructing a capital series and to arrive at a stock of capital, the approach used in this paper is to look at the cost of capital. And here again, we run into problems. Yeah, because we know that cost of capital includes not only, the current cost of capital. In a broad sense, it is the rental price of capital. Rental price of capital includes values for depreciation, obsolescence, and, and finally discarding rates. With all that, if we can get a reasonably good estimate of the cost of capital, then only we can arrive at a dual measure, which is really a kind of a robust measure. But we know from the literature that both the primal and the dual estimates vary considerably. Yeah, and we also know that, in fact, it is Professor Pushpangadan's lectures that has taught us that there is only under one condition that primal and dual estimates actually converge. That is under the condition in a Cobb-Douglas production function. That is under the condition of constant returns to scale and perfect competition. Right? The moment we depart from these conditions, primal estimates and dual estimates actually diverge. And this is a big debate as far as cross-country comparisons are concerned. And I'm sure we will get into that debate when the authors of this paper also, when they try to extend it to other states. Why do I say this? I say this because for the construction of data then becomes a tedious process. Cost of capital that this paper uses is basically State Bank of India's interest rates, yeah, which is the same across all states. Yeah? So you don't get a differentiated cost of capital across states, but you get differences in terms of wage rates as well as the labor's kind of costs. So one variable, basically one major variable in the cost function is the same across states, and another variable changes across states, which means that the primal and dual estimates can never converge, kind of a thing, right? So what I really wanted to highlight is that the kind of problems that we encountered in terms of primal estimates also plague when it comes to the dual estimates, especially when we are talking about the cost of capital. Now, that is one point that I wanted to emphasize. The second point that I wanted to emphasize is that, well, there is a long-standing debate in productivity literature that we should now start moving away from aggregate production function. Yeah. In fact, the phenomenon of productivity then, and as Professor Joseph was emphasizing in his opening remarks, the questions of innovation the questions of technical change or technological progress can be understood only at a micro level. There is a very strong school of thought that argues. Now, if you look at that literature, yeah, there are three broad streams in that literature, yeah, which argues that there is a need to depart from aggregate productivity. One stream or one set of literature is that, or this set of studies look at aggregate productivity differences across countries that results from the obstacles to an optimal allocation of resources. Yeah. So resource allocation, basically capital's allocation, have a lot of obstacles, and that is really, creating problems in terms of estimating the production function according to this school of thought. So an aggregate level production function might not give us much of an interest. This set of literature also argues that, or will make a very forceful argument to depart from the Cobb-Douglas production function. Bartelsman et al. In 2013 provide a very, very strong argument for this, and they document a positive correlation between firm sizes and productivity levels. Yeah? And their argument is to use a CES production function, not a Cobb-Douglas production function. So that is one kind of an argument and one set of a literature to move away from macro to micro level kind of studies or firm level studies. The second stream of literature talks about endogenous growth theory, to which Professor Pushpangadan also alluded. Now, monopolistic competition models with the CES aggregator has been the kind of a typical production function of this literature, especially for the kind of models that Paul Romer in his 1990 paper talks about, yeah, which was further refined and illustrated in Romer's 1994 paper, because it grants market power to firms that allows recouping the cost of innovations. So you're departing from the perfect competition framework and you're bringing imperfect competition to your analysis. Yeah. And this has been articulated in the subsequent studies by changing the specification of the CES production function, which actually provide allowances for firms to have incentives to conduct R&D investments and steal some of the market share from the rivals, which means that aggregate production functions might not be able to capture such effects. Now, the third stream of literature concerns with the kind of quantitative relevance of aggregate productivity, basically in the context of misallocation of factors of production. Yeah. And they provide evidence to show that factor allocations quite often are subject to microeconomic shocks. Yeah. And they also shows that, growth accounting structure that is proposed by the Cobb-Douglas production function might not be a general standard kind of a thing. And in a very simple kind of a specification, CES could be a better kind of a production function to handle these kind of issues. So the point that I wanted to emphasize here is that when we are talking about this whole phenomenon in terms of, the drivers of growth, then we need to have a combination of micro evidences that can stitch up a macro story. Otherwise, then the problem is that we might mask certain kind of, changes that are taking place at the micro level. And that's my second point that I wanted to really emphasize here. Third point is a very, very simple kind of a technical issue that is used in the time series thing. There is a very standard kind of a test for unit roots that has been employed here, and that is the Sievert-Andrews test. And we know that Sievert-Andrews test actually gives you only one breakpoint, but now we have moved away from that. There are possibilities of testing for multiple breaks. Why only one break? Yeah. So it will be very useful if we can use alternate tests, for example, Jushenbai and Perron test to look at multiple breaks differently, and also to look at some kind of, other kinds of unit root tests rather than the Zivert and Ute test in terms of looking at the stationarity of variables, which will give us more robustness to our results also. Finally, yeah, we know that co-integration is an area which has exploded in terms of time series techniques, and we could use alternate methods, not only the Engel-Granger kind of a thing. There are other methods that have come, which could also be used to look at the robustness of the methods that we are using. Yeah. Now, one more final point, and I'll stop here. I think one of the kind of, thoughts that this paper leaves us with is very important in terms of understanding growth process in Kerala. That is, we need to really look at the possibilities of employing an endogenous growth model and then see the contribution of technological progress to growth. Because Kerala has a kind of a long-standing role for human capital. Human capital formation in Kerala has been slightly high. Now, the solo models does not account for the qualitative differences in labor or human capital formation, although the augmented solo model do provide flexibility for that. But a kind of a growth model that really brings in the possibilities of human capital, A, B, possibilities to see how, an open economy can actually benefit from, interactions with the rest of the world, which is actually integrated to the new growth theory. If we can have some kind of a conceptualization of growth process in Kerala through that lens, perhaps I think that will be very, very fascinating. And that can provide perhaps a new narrative in terms of understanding growth process. So in that sense, this is provocative in terms of, questioning some of the existing paradigms in terms of understanding growth process in Kerala. And it pushes for an argument to look at some of the alternate possibilities in terms of explaining growth in Kerala. One final small kind of a thing. When I look at this figure in terms of TFPG, Kerala and India, more or less it is moving in the same kind of a trend thing that we see. My hunch is that could be because you use the same variable in terms of the cost of capital, that is interest rates, which is determined in an all India way. Yeah. So that could actually be one of the factors which is providing you almost identical kind of a pattern in terms of the TFPG, Kerala and India, which was a plot that was showed. So I will stop here. Once again, I thank the organizers for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
I have saved you in between the role of chair and professor and discussant. I would like you to continue the role of chair now. Right. Because online, offline is a problem. That's okay. Anyway, I think on behalf of you, I will do the monitoring aspect here.
Please.
And
Please.
the floor is now open for, first of all, I think it was a wonderful discussion. The agenda has been taken much forward from the highly restrictive assumptions, mostly operating at the ionosphere, to the ground level realities where to some extent the economies and where the actors operate. That has been done. And that is what we should be ideally doing, because we have to take the economics. At least it is too late to take, at least you cannot delay further taking economics, textbook economics of the irrelevant, highly irrelevant economics textbook that we have been teaching, to the realistic textbooks which touches the lives of the people around. We should be talking things that people, it is palette. Economics is not that complicated a subject. We make it complicated for unknown reasons. And I think I appreciate in that sense the comments which Professor Suresh Babu made. And I think at the same time, we have all freedom to be within your paradigms, because we need to respect, because on innovation, I have an altogether different perspective, because I belong to a school which he was coming nearby, but not we have we appreciate that. But then there, of course, we have thoughts, we have different role, different perspective. Each perspective has its relevance. So I think let us hear from the immediate response. Then we'll open the floor for further discussion.
I had enough for the younger generation. I have initiated enough problems, created problems for the younger generation, a lifetime work. This is, I think, he has done that excellent job. Suresh Babu has done that excellent job. I don't have any other comments to make. Please send your comments so that we will circulate among the scholars, so that if they are interested in working on it, let them do it. Okay.
Sure,
See
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir. Sure, sir. Well said.
But still, there could be some question. What assume that a new government has come today? New government is coming, and the minister is here. Okay, you have recently made an interesting question about is technical progress an engine of growth of Kerala? Please tell me, what can I do? What will be the answer? At least, because we are all living on, you are not so much. We are all living on tax money of poor people, and we are answerable to them. When we do research, we need to have some takeaway for them. So we need to at least more questions. Let us have more questions. I think that's.
Yes, I was
Yeah,
actually
please.
I was about to ask the same question. Because, I should say
That's
that
why you being in planning board, I'm not in unplanning board.
actually it has been long since I listened to Dr. Pushpagadan sir. That's why I came here. So I am very sure that your presentation may not be digestible for me. It will be always too technical. The same question and the same question I was about to ask is what Dr. KJ Joseph sir said. So, when the government, I mean, as a policy maker, uh, how can we take a decision or policy from this thing? So, because I just want to know that whether the technical progress is actually an engine of growth in Kerala. But after the present, maybe because of the variables you have taken is far away from reality or something. So I would be great if you can say that what the government, after listening to this presentation, what kind of policy government can take to induce technical progress for inducing the growth of Kerala. That's only question.
We had it's only just started, the debate is only started now. We have to examine the endogenous growth in Kerala. What has happened to that? Then only policy questions come up. You have to wait. So we can, what one could do is endogenous model should be examined. That has happened to Kerala? Then only it becomes a complete set of, some complete answer. Now what we have examined is the exogenous technical progress. Manna from heaven. Everything comes from outside, not inside. Is it true that particular assumption is valid? Because we spend so much money in agriculture. The amount of money we don't know. What is that return we are getting? So, first reaction is endogenous growth has not made much impact in Kerala as well, my hunch. For example, you have for that last 30 or 40 years, there was a coconut research station in Kayangulam. Spent so much money and without Tamil Nadu farmers, we can't survive for coconut. So what is happening then? This endogenous growth model, what is happening in Kerala? This has to be thoroughly examined. That is a priority in agriculture. I think that's the one thing we have. This crop wise also, it has to be examined, thoroughly examined. What are the problems? What are the policy decisions we have to make? That is the only thing.
Okay, I think we will have more questions. I don't want to solve all the problems here, but let's have more questions. I think the purpose, as Professor
Yeah.
Rajni said, is to have more questions. I think I would also, yeah, please.
Sir, it's a good initiative, sir.
Yeah.
Congratulations, sir and Anup. Sir, my question is, I just want to know which way you define this technical progress, because whether it is from the private or from the public, or which way, how we define that thing. That is the first question of mine. And the second one is regarding this per capita output. No, actually, this solo model is applicable only in developed countries having the industrialization. But as far as Kerala as a regional economy, it's already there is deindustrialization, and also per capita output is mainly coming from the service sector. So, in which way you applied this model in Kerala context? That is another question. And also regarding the same question about the application, what the government or the other stakeholders do for this thing, or to for the further development or the growth of Kerala. That is also there in these are the things I just
Ask our
Ritik?
Ritvik, yeah. Good morning, sir. My primary questions are on what you have like already answered, because my questions are on the capital controversy, because like how much we can justify the solo framework here. That is my first question. And you've been talking about the growth sustainability, and solo says it's on the technical progress, but there is also the theories comes from the demand sides, because even one of the study last year came out from CDS by Abhinav. He says that certain size category of manufacturing firms has a problem of underutilization of capacity, and they are constrained by the demand thing. So that is my first like concern regarding this analysis. Even though we are going with the Solos framework and the productivity analysis, like even Suresh Babu sir told about the primal way of calculating the total factor productivity. Like if we constrain our study towards the manufacturing sector and using only ASI data sets, can we calculate, like we'll be able to calculate the primal way, and is it more reliable like analysis than going for a large aggregate production function? We'll constrain our study only on the manufacturing sector, then will it be much more like conclusive analysis? That is my
Suresh Babu, the right person to
Yes,
answer.
sir. Yes, sir. I have a couple of things to answer. I think one. I think we talked about the policy outcomes, and that is very straightforward from this work itself. That is, what we need to do is to go back to the conventional growth accounting and see the contribution of each of the factor inputs to growth. That is, how much of the total growth is contributed by capital, how much of the total growth is contributed by labor, and how much by TFP. And then if we find that the contribution of TFP is very low, then I think policies should be in place to even enhance productivity. And we know that this cannot happen overnight. Yeah, because we need certain conditions with which, technology can be absorbed and technological frontier can be pushed up. And, Professor Joseph is a better person to talk on that. So policy outcomes are very straightforward from this. Once when we use a growth accounting framework to find out what is the contribution of each of these factors to the growth process in Kerala, and that we have sufficient data, 30 years, and over 30 years we can see period wise, yeah, what has been the contribution in terms of percentages of each of these towards growth, and then that can give us some insights to that. My second point is that I think we should also do it in terms of sectorally from a policy perspective. Yeah, manufacturing, we have the annual survey of industries data. Agriculture, we can use the cost of cultivation data to some extent. Yeah, and then see services also. Now we can use a certain combination of data sets and then see. We already know the value added from services, which is the output indicator. Input indicators, we can use some of these input indicators, and we can construct a series through which. So if we get these three different sectoral kind of a picture, that will be even more useful from a policy point of view. And then we can say that productivity is growing fast in services compared to manufacturing. So then, what this, Raghuram Rajan type of an argument that, Kerala or India should now focus more on services rather than manufacturing can be pushed even more forcefully once when we have such kind of disaggregate estimates. A final thing about demand. Yes, once when we look at the Cambridge tradition, Cambridge growth models actually emphasize a lot on demand and demand constraint as a kind of a constraint on growth process. But ideally, in an open economy, demand for firms, especially within the subnational level, need not come only from within that region. Yeah. So demand can come for firms that are producing in Kerala, demand can come from outside Kerala. Yeah. Now, this demand constraint then is to be seen as a national phenomenon. Yeah. So in open economies, there is this advantage for firms that they can actually sell anywhere. And now with one India, one market things and all, there is no problem for firms like that. So demand side of the story then needs a different kind of an explanation if we're talking about capacity utilization and its correlation with demand. Yeah. So that needs another kind of an analysis and a framework perhaps. That could be my immediate responses. But policy outcomes, yes, plenty, and more possible once when we do disaggregate analysis.
If one is truly concerned about policy outcome, particularly by sitting in this building and in this room, I would like to kind of take a step forward in the sense that if you really dig deep, when you take endogeneity into at the center stage, you will realize that it is two things. First of all, when you have innovation or science and technology is nothing but the generation of knowledge. That knowledge can be seen in terms of what is called documented, that's a part of the process of learning process. Knowledge, if the most important resource, if knowledge is the most important resource, learning is the most important process. That learning can be either scientific, systematic, through organized research, or it can be more that leading to scientific knowledge. It can be more experience-based, informal, leading to synthetic knowledge. So the combination of these two are very important. And particularly when you are talking about scientific knowledge need investment in R&D. But unfortunately, in the particular fiscal architecture of the type that we are following, in fact, I just finished a paper on that part of it. One argument there is that we consider in the heightened concern for fiscal prudence and keeping our fiscal targets at 3%, what we consider is we would all the current expenditure to be what is called revenue deficit to be seen as zero, and we consider most of the investment in the knowledge generation and other things. We capital expenditure by when we encourage the quite a lot of investment or spending by way of knowledge is seen as consumption expenditure. And I mean, to put it a very 100 metric tons of steel used is considered as a capital expenditure, but $100 billion invested in generating an AI. That investment in human capital in the form of wages and salaries, that is treated as consumption expenditure. So the very conceptualization of capital, which in the public finance we use, derived from the industrial revolution period, has to change immediately. And so much so that in this country, none of the finance commission ever uttered the word R&D. We submitted a report last year. And these kind of conceptualization, if the institutions do not change according to changing context, don't expect that India will ever become a developed world. So I'm saying that these are some of the key things. But for that matter, Kerala, I mean, we can debate at length. So I would say that if we can come up to the question that if TFP is actually it is the factor input, the TFP is actually pulling Kerala economy down, then we have to look at, despite we are the first state in the country to come up with an R&D budget. And at the national level in this country, we have R&D budget. R&D spending is of the order of 0.64%, which has shamelessly declined from almost 1%. You know it better. And in fact, I told Science and Technology Department, please remove that graph from your website. It's steadily declining from 6.1, almost 0.1% early 90s. Today it is coming down to 0.64%. And knowledge economy, we are actually a knowledge economy. And at the subnational level, we have what is called at 0.28% or something like that RBI estimate. So this is something which, we need to do more. I would say that from a public finance institution, we need to, what you have talked about, we have this, what you have discussed has got enormous public finance implication. And when we are discussing these matters in this kind of a room, we should be bringing those kind of dimensions to account. But what does it mean for public policy from a public finance fiscal perspective? That's something to be, you have provoked that. That's something very nice to kind of hear. Anyway, okay.
Any other question?
Yes, please, yeah.
Very impressive presentation, sir. I have no questions, but some suggestions. To my understanding, the long-term economic growth is influenced by three factors. One is technology, second is institution, third is ideology. In this presentation, we took only technology because you already said if you want to predict it more, we need measurements. In the absence of measures, we cannot take institution and ideology. My suggestion is don't leave it, sir. If measures are not available, we can create some measures for measuring institutional factors and ideological factors. For example, institutional factors, we can develop some variables like on governance quality measured by what public expenditure rate or something, and the fiscal sustainability we can take as an that institutional variable, that GDP ratio is there. So many variables we can create, so many measures, indicators also we can develop. In the ideological part also, there are development paradigms. For example, it is pro-market or welfare oriented, or inequality is there, inequality is there. So many variables and indicators are available in the institutional part and the ideological part. If we can include all these things too, it would be better. Then another part is technology. We are living in a technological world. Each and every second, our thought process is also governed by technology. For example, in the AI era, we are living. In this situation, technological progress is a engine or a facilitator. That we have to think twice. That's also because his technical progress is an economic engine or an economic facilitator. But already we are living in a technological era. Then that's the two sides. Okay, thanks.
What is the?
Yeah, we are
I don't know who is.
the world of high frequency data. There is nothing that you can't quantify because I don't think that quantification cannot be a problem because you should know how to quantify. Because I think so, we can quantify.
No,
Yeah, let them do it.
let me be very frank with you.
Yeah.
My capability to quantify ideological variables and institutional variables very limited.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me be very
Yeah, yeah.
frank.
No, no. That
I don't
you
make
should
any
encourage
commitment which I
youngsters.
cannot.
Don't do it. Let youngsters do it.
Youngsters, sociology,
Right.
you are talking about a sociological approach, all those things can be done. But such people should be taken that initiative. For us, I don't know whether you are able to do. These two persons are now involved. We may be able to do it if we complete the technological study for across the states. Then we have one or two variables can be identified and these questions can. Across states only we can, not for Kerala. Kerala's, this case study cannot be done for institutional as well as ideological. Because we don't have the capability, that is the point.
So, young generation, this is a question actually hitting you, not of we are all going to kind of.
So I
Right.
am always falling back to him.
Yes, I knew.
But
Younger generation. Okay.
But this young man is fully.
I think if you are all looking for lunch, and then we'll leave the final word to Professor Suresh.
To sum up the story.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of issues have come up now. And this actually gives us an agenda for a series of systematic studies in terms of understanding growth process in Kerala economy. One of the things that, I would again go back to my opening kind of a remarks that, like Robert Lucas pointed out, once when we start thinking about growth, we won't think about anything else. Because there are so many factors that are coming into play. Someone just talked about ideology. Someone just talked about, institutional factors, policy kind of issues. Yeah. And there are a lot of studies on this already existing in different parts of the world. For example, in the measurement of institutional factors, there is a set of or a school of thought that argues that indicators of corruption is very important. Corruption and growth relationship are tested. Robert Barrow does that initially, and then there is a lot of other models that have come from that. Institutional factors, yes, very important, and we know the Nobel Prize winning work of Asimalago and Robinson on that. So it really opens up a number of things. I would really be very, very happy that if this really moves to the next phase in terms of sectoral studies, as we were talking about. And it will also be very important when, someone raised the question about public sector versus private sector. Professor Pushpangan had initiated studies about service sector and public sector's efficiency long time back. Public utilities efficiency. In fact, pricing of public utilities is a course that he was teaching us when we were students. So a number of issues have come up. And I'm sure that this will provoke our next generation of scholars to look into these aspects at a minute day. So thank you very much once again, and thanks for this opportunity. Thank you.
Formal thanks from our side. I think who is the coordinator will be doing that? Right. Okay.
So good afternoon, everyone. So we are coming to the close of this exercise. So as form of vote of thanks, I would like to thank each and every one of you who participated in this seminar. And I would like to thank Professor Suresh Babu, who has been discussing the paper in detail. And we'd like to thank Professor Pushpangan and as well as Dr. Anup, who has presented the paper. And I would like to thank our director, Professor KJ Joseph, has made all this opportunity and make this event in a very fine way. And we are all, as a part of formal vote of thanks, I want to thank Dr. Sunita, who has joined here. So thank you, each one and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to have lunch together. Yeah.
Af-
Right.
After I complete my commitment.
Don't worry about it. I know that you will do it.
Yeah.